Thank you for joining me for another Wedding Trendsetter interview that forms part of the International Wedding Trend Report for 2017. Today I am excited to be chatting with Harmony Walton, the founder of the Bridal Bar, a group of complementary wedding and event libraries dedicated to providing expert advice, inspired ideas and the best event professionals available to engaged couples. Now, Harmony has over a decade of wedding marketing, consulting and brand representation experience in the luxury wedding industry. So welcome, Harmony, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
No problem. Well, I thought today we'd do something a little different. All our interviews so far have been completely focused on the wedding trends for 2017. But with the experience you've got in business and branding and marketing, I thought we'd take a bit of a different tack and talk more about the trending in the world of business and what's trending. So my first question is really easy. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your brand and what you do.
So the Bridal Bar started as basically a concierge service, a wedding library to help connect couples with companies. When you get engaged and you don't know where to start, you want to find a reputable company, someone almost with a watchdog in between to make sure that they are providing the services they were told they would provide, to make sure you get someone qualified, experienced, and also the right fit, because your best friend may have had a fantastic wedding planner, but she may not be the right price point or style or experience level or specific niche that you need. And so the Bridal Bar really started as an opportunity for couples to get that information and to have a friendly face that was a little bit more experienced and level of expertise for their wedding. Over the past 12 years, that has evolved enormously. What we discovered was that a lot of wedding professionals are really good at what they do. They're great florists, they're talented photographers, they're fantastic graphic designers, they're terrible at business.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to be good at both. You've got such a creative mind and then say, oh, now get the back end of business when you don't have a business degree and you haven't been to business school and things like that. And get that side together too is challenging. And so we started really helping our corporate clients, our business clients, grow their brand, kind of hone in on their strategies and assist them in bigger and bigger marketing campaigns in order to better present themselves to those couples. So now we offer a full scope of consulting for different wedding professionals, B2B as well as B2C. And then one of the ways in which we get those companies out to market, or several of the ways in which we get those companies out to market, are through some of our different online channels. So we have a popular destination wedding blog called Get Fet, where we feature exclusively destination wedding content, since bridalbar.com is very hyper-local and regional in the markets. And then I have a radio show with iHeartRadio. It airs Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. on America's Talk, and then it's on demand as well. Oh, thank you. So it's a lot of fun. We interview experts of all different areas, and we really just let them shine and share their expertise with couples, which is a fun way to cross-market as well as assist and educate couples. So that's a little bit about what we do.
That's huge. I mean, you really have so many things covered there. And, Bridal Bar is dealing with the consumer. And then, of course, you've got the business-to-business side of things working with wedding businesses. So that's absolutely massive. But then I guess that's where you get the experience, because you've been there, you've seen it, you've done it yourself.
Absolutely. And, when I started my business, I was 24. And, to this day, it's still, to a degree, a shoestring marketing budget. And it certainly was when I first started. I had to bootstrap and hustle. And I think a lot of wedding professionals go through that and need to run their businesses that way. And so I have that personal experience, having done it and seen what's worked, what hasn't, as well as working with other brands over the years to really kind of hone in on how we can help professionals in the best way possible without those massive Martha Stewart brand budgets.
Which, let's face it, none of us really have. It's only the very few that have those big budgets to be able to work with. So it's good to have somebody that's got the knowledge, the know-how and the experience and has been where they have. I think that probably helps. Now, I read in an interview you did at college as one of Dustin Hoffman's assistants, was it?
Yes.
That must have been a job and a half. So how did that help you? Did it prepare you in any way for what was to come?
I did that for 3 years in college, and it was, other than Bridal Bar, the most fun I've ever had in a job. He was fantastic to work with. I moved to Los Angeles to go to college, and here I was getting a little bit of the Hollywood limelight. And I think it helped me in a lot of different ways. For Bridal Bar, it helped me to be able to assist other celebrity couples in a way that they were used to and needed to be catered to, because I had done that with the Hoffman family for so many years. So I really knew what they needed to feel comfortable. And so we've worked with a lot of celebrity couples, I think, because of that, because we give them the level of service and the type of service that they've come to know, expect, and demand. On the business side, I had the entrepreneurial spirit in me already, but it definitely grew working with him and his team. He's a creative genius, and it really got my juices flowing that you can kind of create your own destiny and use your creativity to take it in a direction that you would never think possible. And I'm really grateful for that time there.
Sounds like he was quite an inspiration to you.
Oh, he still is. I'm blown away. I mean, he's not young anymore. He's no spring chicken, and he's still working incredibly hard, and he's still reinventing himself and always changing and evolving. And I think that's something that's really important in my business and in the wedding business. And I look at him and other industries, and I see that how important that is to do. So he's definitely still an influence on my life.
Wow, what a great way to start your working life as an assistant to Dustin Hoffman. It doesn't really get much better than that, does it? Yeah, it's none too shabby, as they say. So on your website, you say, and I quote, "At the Bridal Bar, we believe that there's more than just one golden ticket needed to market your wedding business. To achieve success, it takes a combination of strong messages over time across multiple platforms with the proper structure and service in place to support such efforts." So I was wondering if you can tell me more about that and how other wedding professionals can sort of aspire to achieve that themselves.
I think this is probably the most important thing that I've learned in marketing my clients' businesses and my own, is that, I have a lot of companies that will come to me and say, "Oh, we saw you just worked on this celebrity wedding. We really want a celebrity wedding." Or you're in Hollywood. "We really want a reality TV show. Can you get us one?" And they sort of think that that's going to overnight success, change their business, and they can, ride off into the sunset and enjoy the good life. And the reality is that's not the case. No. Not at all. And in fact, sometimes even those big ticket, success stories can hurt your business. We worked with a company, Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, when they got married, they were clients of ours, and we booked them with one of our companies who ultimately saw a decline in their business after. Now they made a year's salary on that one wedding, but then everyone in the market assumed that they were so expensive and at this so high end that they were unattainable. And so their leads actually dropped. And so we had to put a plan in place to market their business and sort of shift the message of their business that allowed them to enjoy the celebrity that they got and the press that they got, but still be attainable to the average Joe. And I think that comes through not one golden ticket. You're not going to have a sustainable business for the next 20 years because you're Instagram famous. You may have a jump in sales right now, but then when Instagram dies and the next best thing comes along, you have to sustain. And so I think it's really important to seed the market across all the platforms that are relevant to your business and have a good long-term strategy that involves not just one thing that you're really good at or really focused at or is really hot for the moment, but incorporates all these different avenues. And then you're constantly evolving, growing, and changing that. So you're getting out in front of it. If you have 70,000 Instagram followers now, and that's providing you a good source of income and a good source of business, what are you doing now to change, to get out in front of it, so that you don't start to lose the connection or the engagement on Instagram, or when the next thing after Instagram comes, you're already out in front of it and a first mover and ready to go, so that your business doesn't see a dip when a platform does.
That's such good advice. I mean, apart from the fact that you need to make sure you're on the right platforms where your customers are going to see you and not doing every platform just because it's out there, it's about staying ahead of the game, isn't it? And, one person I've always admired in business is Madonna. She's the queen of reinvention.
That's for sure.
She's always ahead of the game. She's never faltered. She's always there. And in a way, that's what you need to be doing with your business, is always looking to not reinvent yourself exactly in the way she has, but obviously to be ahead of the trends, to know what's coming next and not settle on your laurels because you think you've made it, because there's always somebody just behind you who's going to come along and overtake you.
Absolutely. I had a mentor of mine once say, if you lie down on the train tracks, you're just going to get run over. You need to be the train. And no matter how much success you're experiencing, you will be lying down on the train tracks if you don't become the train and keep it moving.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Now, branding. especially in the wedding industry where we're selling ourselves as opposed to a product. It's very personal now. So I found it's much more about the story behind the brand. So I'm interested to know how much of Harmony Walton is infused in your brand, in the Bridal Bar.
I think it's infused more than I'd like it to be. I definitely designed a business. I said, I tried, I took classes on how to be a wedding planner, and I actually had an internship, a different one in college that lasted 3 weeks with a wedding planner, and I was terrible at it and I didn't like it. And I tried different things. I knew I wanted to be in the wedding space, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And I realized at that point that one of the things I didn't want was to set myself up for a career that I was working every Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, no,
and that
I hear you.
that I had to be there, from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. every Saturday night. And so one of the ways I did that was by creating a brand, the Bridal Bar, that didn't have my name in it. And that was by design because I wanted to create something bigger than myself and something that could function without me being there every minute of the day and without someone saying, well, I need to speak to Harmony, or I only want to pay you if it's you and not someone else.
Absolutely.
Now, as you mentioned, it's a very personal industry. It's a very personal story that every brand is telling, that I have sort of become that brand. I think if you ask anyone in the wedding space, you say the Bridal Bar, my name is synonymous with it.
Definitely.
But with the public's eye, I have marketed it very differently. So if you pick up a magazine and you read about the Bridal Bar, my name is almost never in there unless they needed a quote of some kind, in which case it's my name paired with the Bridal Bar. I think that my personal style and my level of service and what I stand for in business is very much infused in the Bridal Bar brand. And what that does is that allows me to get new clients on the regular from the business end because I've built up a reputation and a level of service that they know that they are going to get me. And so that allows my business to thrive because we charge, the way we make our money is we charge retainer fees for the event professionals, but we're complementary to the public. So on the public side of it, I've worked almost twofold, almost as two separate businesses, to create a brand that they know, trust, and like, that has really nothing to do with me. It's a complimentary service, but they know the company, the brand, the name is something that they can come to, and it doesn't matter who they sit with. They're going to get that same quality of service.
Well, I think what you've said there sort of will resonate with a lot of wedding planners because a lot of planners do launch their company using their own name, and that does make it very hard to on-sell, which, let's face it, at the end of the day we're all going to want to sell our company at some point in time, and as you say, B, to sort of remove yourself and know that the company is going to function whether you're there or not. So it's certainly a difficult call, I think, for some people because they like the idea of having their name in the company and it being more personal, but then obviously you've got the problems that you just highlighted there. So it's an interesting one and a hard one.
It is. It's a catch-22, and I don't think there's a catch-all answer. Right now the trend in wedding businesses is put your name on it, put your name on it, put your name on it. But that, when I started, that was not the trend. And I think we've seen the cyclical system coming through where now it's become very much about it, put your name on it, put your name on it. 5 years from now, it will probably go back the other way and be a little bit different. And so I think you have to really look at what do you do for a living and what is your skill set and why are people hiring you already and what's your long-term goal. I look at it as sort of the yellow brick road. I love anything Disney and Wizard of Oz and all that stuff. And I, what does your sort of Emerald City look like? And if it is selling your company in the next 5 years, is it possible to do that with it being called, your first and last name? And if not, then what bricks are you laying to kind of get there? And it may mean that your name is very much intertwined in the business, and it may mean that it's not. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you've structured it.
Thank you. Good piece of advice there for people to take on board. Now, one thing that is rife in this industry, and that's copycats. I know you've had that issue many times, and I actually read a story about two women coming into your store with the sole purpose of finding out how you do things and what you do so they could go off and copy it for themselves. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that story and, of course, how you'd then recommend other women in the industry to deal with copycats like that, because it is an issue we face on a regular basis.
That's a funny story, and you must have dug deep on the internet because that's an old story.
I did my
research. That happened many, many times in my career, but in that particular instance, these two women came in, and when it was very apparent that they were there to gather information and then copy me, they happened to be greeted by me at the store. And so I said, when do you open your version of the Bridal Bar? And I basically politely called them on it. And they were mortified. They were incredibly embarrassed, and they were incredibly apologetic. And they said, "Do you want us to leave?" And I said, "No, not at all." I said, there are plenty of people that have tried to recreate what we do, and no one does, because it's sort of my special sauce, and you can try, and you will be different. And I'm not worried. So come on in and take a look around. I'm not going to hand you my business model, but my business plan, but I'll answer any questions. And I was gracious and kind, and they left, and they called back the next day, and they said, "We want to work with you. We don't want to copy you. So can we buy a franchise? Can we license this business model?" And
wow.
you were so kind to us, and what we were doing was wrong, and you didn't make us feel that way. And we realized you really do have the secret sauce that we want to work with. And ultimately, they became my first licensed market in San Diego, and they became essentially my business partners, which was...
That's quite a story.
Yeah, and it was not what I was... The funny thing is they taught me to think bigger than I had. I had thought, maybe I'll open a second location and I'll own 2 small stores and it'll be lovely. And then they got me thinking bigger. I was like, I could sell this to other markets and have other owners in different cities and things like that. And it really took my business in a different direction. And I think that what I learned from that is, as angry as I may be behind closed doors when that happens, you have to take a deep breath and just kind of kill them with kindness. And at the end of the day, ignore them. I had a lot of trademark infringements that I couldn't ignore. They were legal issues. So we did handle those as quickly as possible. But in terms of the emotional side of it, you really have to just put blinders on and ignore it and shut it off, because it will eat you up, and it will take away from you doing your daily part of the business.
Oh, absolutely. It's not something you can worry about too much. They always say that, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. I can't always agree with that, because, as you say, sometimes behind closed doors, I want to punch some walls, but
right.
You learn to have a thick skin with that type of thing. And I think there's too many other things that you've got to do to worry too much about those that are copying you. If they're copying you, they're never going to be a major threat to you. So that's always the way I've personally looked at it, and sort of just carried on with what I do. So
absolutely,
it's a healthy way, I think, to deal with it.
You have to. I mean, we're small business owners. We're so invested in what we do that it's so personal that you have to just kind of have some separation just for your own well-being, and then kind of keep moving forward. Be that train.
Absolutely. Yes, I like that expression, be that train. I'm going to remember that one. So we need to talk about trends for 2017. A question I had for you was about the importance of trends in business and how you think you can use them to your advantage.
I think it's really important to be aware of them. It's not necessarily really important to jump on the bandwagon. So I think whether if you're working with a couple and they're coming to you with their Pinterest boards, it's really important that you be the expert at what you do, and you're completely aware almost ahead of time of what they're going to come in and show you and say, this is what I want. Essentially, so that you can educate them and shift them away from them. I think someone that is really creative at what they do and really good at what they do in the wedding industry looks at a trend, and the bride that says, I want the blush and the white wedding, and that florist may be going, oh gosh, I've only done that 400 times this year. They are out in front of it. And again, they're the first mover, they're the changer. And they say, that's beautiful. I'm going to give you what you want, but let's turn it on its side, do it a little differently, and give you something all your own and one of a kind. And I think that if you're very aware of the trends in the market, you can really invest the time ahead of time in figuring out how you can push those trends forward, change them, shift them, honor what your clients' requests are, but do it a little differently that still honors your style, and you're not, again, copycatting some picture on Pinterest, not because you want to, but because a bride or a groom says, this is what I want, I saw it on Pinterest and I think it's great. I think it's really important that the wedding industry, I hear a lot of wedding professionals complain about the trends, like, when is this trend going to die? When is that going to die? For years it was the mason jar and the vintage wedding trend, and when's that going to go away? Well, you know what? It's our responsibility to make it go away. We are the ones that shift the market for the brides. So if you have a wedding blog, if you have just the portfolio pieces that you put on your website, if you're giving an interview, or if you're creating a proposal for a client, find a way to move beyond the mason jar. Maybe it's using the mason jar in a new fashion, or something that pushes it further along so that we get away from it. Because I think The personalization trend is really the biggest trend, and I don't see that going away. And I think that is kind of being aware of the trends, recognizing them, and changing them for your client becomes the personalization trend, which is never going to go away.
No, I just think that's going to get bigger, to be totally honest. It's people don't want that cookie cutter wedding. They don't want the traditions anymore. They want to do something that's all about them. And ultimately, it means the people attending the event enjoy it that much more because it is personal. So, no, I agree. I really don't think that's going anywhere either. Fingers crossed.
I think as a guest, the worst thing you can do is go to a wedding, and I've been there, and you sit in a wedding and you know the bride or the groom or the bride of the bride. You know one half of the party and not really the other, and you walk away from the wedding knowing nothing more about the other half of that couple. And you go, oh, well, that was a beautiful wedding, but I didn't really see my friend in the wedding, and I didn't really get to know her partner in the wedding. And that's when that personalization comes in, when you really, as a guest, you walk away going, gosh, I know who they are as a couple. I know who that other person is that maybe I didn't really know before the wedding day.
Yeah.
Or I really saw my friend come out and shine through all the details that they created.
And ultimately that adds to the guest experience, which is pretty much what we're all about at the end of the day as wedding professionals. That's what our aim is to give those guests an experience they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. So
absolutely.
Yes.
And the couple too.
Of course, that definitely goes without saying. So Harmony, something I wanted to talk to you about was social media and what's going to be hot. What are the platforms people are going to be using, and what can they do to make themselves seen and heard on social media in 2017?
I think 2017 will still be the year of Instagram. 2018 will probably shift to something new, but we don't know exactly what that is. Too soon to tell. But I think that what's going to change is how we use Instagram and really who rises to the cream of the crop of Instagram this year. And I think one of the ways you can do that is by shifting to really the authentic and the storytelling. With everything that went on with our election here in the States this year, people are really kind of grasping at their family, at their traditions, at their cultures, and really honoring those and staying true and proud to them. And I think that we see that in wedding personalization trends as is. And so it's no longer about throwing up a white bouquet on your Instagram feed because that's what the trend is and that's going to get you more followers, because it's no longer going to get you more followers. There are enough white, beautiful bouquets on Instagram that people don't need the clutter. They want to declutter and they want to get back to the authentic stories. And so if you do put up that white bridal bouquet, why? What's the story behind it? And what makes it authentic to you, to your audience, to the couple that you're sharing, and really get behind and tell the why and honor the family, the tradition, the culture, and that personalization. And I think that's going to help you shine more on Instagram. It's also going to show more of who you are, but that authentic storytelling is going to be much more important than just the pretty picture feed. I also think that along that same line, the idea of micro-influencers is going to be really important in 2017. And it goes to what we're seeing in business trends already, and less in the wedding market, but I think we're going to pick up on it. And the idea of that is that clutter is not what people want in their lives anymore. And so you may have had this Instagram person that had several 100,000 followers, and maybe they gave you a shout out and that got you a lot of new followers. Well, that's great, but those followers are going to start to drop off if you're not providing them a connection, that personal, emotional connection. And so what we're seeing now is a lot of people are taking those large accounts, they are following them less. So they might still follow their feed, but they're paying attention to what they're saying less because it's not as authentic. And instead, they may go to a wedding planner's feed that only has a couple thousand followers, but they really love what that planner is, what she does, what she stands for, what she shares, and the stories behind it. So that when that little wedding planner in your local market shares maybe a product or a centerpiece of yours and tells the story behind it or the why she loves it, why she used it, whatever it may be, you're much more likely to gain a more authentic following and fan base from that's going to stick with you. And because Instagram changed their algorithm this year from he who has the most wins to he has the most engagement wins. It's really important that you get a following that likes your comment, that likes your post, that comments on your post, that you can engage back and forth with. It's almost better for your feed now to have a smaller number as long as their engagement is high versus a larger number and no one really listening or paying attention and engaging. It's all about engagement in 2017.
That makes so much sense, because people they want to know the people behind the brand. And I always say to our students at the academy here that really, before anyone's going to buy from you, they're not just going to land on your website, send an inquiry form and book a consultation with you. 9 times out of 10, they're going to stalk you for a while. They're going to want to get to know you. They're going to want to see the person behind the brand. They're going to want to know what you say on Facebook, what you say on Twitter if you use it. You know, as you quite rightly said, the images that you're sharing either on Pinterest or on Instagram, do they mean something? Are they actually telling a story? Are they getting to see a little bit more about you and the person behind the brand? Because ultimately, that's what they're buying.
Absolutely. And I think you have to be really careful about that, especially with Snapchat and now Instagram stories, in that we now are exposing ourselves even more to our potential consumer base, our potential clients. And you have to put yourself in their shoes. So knowing that they're stalking you and you have yet to know who that person is that even exists in your world, but they're following you. What are you sharing? So if there's a very famous New York wedding planner, and I follow her on Instagram, and I haven't told her this because I haven't seen her, but when I see her in a few weeks, I'm gonna read her the riot act. And she was getting ready to open the doors to this magical, spectacular event in New York City, and she's going, "Look at what we're going to be showing our guests in a few minutes, and sneak peek to this and that." And she really wasn't honoring her client in that moment. And there was no ill intention. It just wasn't thought through all the way. And that what if some of those guests are following and things like that, and now seeing what's going to come. And I think you have to put yourself in your client's shoes, and what's the border, and where do you draw the line of what you'll share and when or how you'll share it, so that you're constantly honoring your client stories as well as your own.
Yeah, and it's very dangerous as well to share too much personal stuff as well. There's a fine line there. So there's only so many pictures we want to see of your cat, which is the other thing that you tend to get a lot of. So a final question for our interview. As you know, we train wedding planners, stylists and designers here at the Academy. So we're dealing with people who are at the very beginning of their career. You know, they have this big dream, big aspiration to become either a planner, stylist or designer. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to give us some advice on what you can do to follow your dream.
You know, I think first and foremost, you have to hustle. I think that's how I've followed my dream and what's worked, and it applies to anything and everything you do. You have to hustle. You've got to know that this is blood, sweat, and tears, especially as a designer or a planner that is going to be working Saturday nights and taking that time away from your family. And that's not going to come easy. So you have to be willing to get down and dirty, bootstrap, and move forward. Something else that I always tell people that are starting their businesses is I have found that it always costs more than you think, but less than you have. And I think that's probably the best piece of advice I could give someone. I've seen so many wedding businesses get into trouble or fail because they throw money at the problem, because they have that luxury. So maybe they had a fantastic year and they've got a lot of cash in the bank, and so next year they want an app or they want this new fabulous website, and they dump tens of thousands of dollars into this thing, which puts them in the red and doesn't provide them any more value, but they thought they had to have it. Now, if they didn't have all that cash in the bank, they would not have invested that way. They would have found a better, smarter, more cost-effective way to grow in the way they needed to grow, but in a way that was financially more safe for them. And I think that's something to keep in mind, is that it's always going to cost more than you think. So if you've budgeted XYZ for your business this year, know that things are going to arise and it's going to cost more than you planned. They always do. Yeah. They always do. But on the inverse is they never cost more than you have. There's always a way. If you really want to participate in that bridal show to launch your business or announce your now open, whatever it may be, there's always a way. I mean, the Bridal Bar logo, I didn't have a lot of money when I started my business. I went to an invitation designer whose work I loved, and I said, hey, I'll represent you if you create my materials. And she was like, all I have to do is make things look pretty, and you're going to go out and hustle for me and get me business. And I said, yeah. And it was a win-win for both of us. And
smart, very smart.
And at the time, the trend was hire a branding agency and give them $20,000 to come up with the color palette, the Pantone colors, and that was what people were doing in business. And I didn't have that money, so I didn't do it that way. And it worked out, I think, actually better for me, because that person I did hustle for, I did perform well for, and then she ended up being one of my biggest sources of referrals and leads, because she was happy with the service and she was my first client. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And what I spoke to earlier, don't be afraid to change even when you're on top.
Oh, I mean, that really is a wise piece of advice. It's, it doesn't matter where you are in your career. There's always something else you can be doing. There's always something else you can be attaining to. And like I said, you've got to keep reinventing it. If you haven't done it yet, it needs to be done, and you've got to think of it. It's one of those sort of scenarios where you cannot afford to stand on your laurels. You always have to be thinking of what's coming next and how you're going to be the first one to do it, or whatever it might be. I know that's something we live by here. We're always trying to think of different ways to do what we already do, but in new and innovative ways, and we'll be the first to embrace a different piece of technology. If we can do something a little bit different, we'll do it. And it stood us in really good stead. It really has.
And it's okay when you do that and something doesn't work.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's strategy and testing. So I was speaking to a big brand, a company I work with recently, and they were saying, we find out what works. 70% of our marketing dollars always goes to that core. And 30% of our marketing dollars goes to testing new things so that we can get out in front of it. And if it doesn't work, we've only lost a little bit, or we haven't invested too much, we haven't blown the bank, and then we try something else. And that change doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hit a home run every time, but you're going to stay out in front of it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of times I've come up with an idea for something and done it, and it's failed miserably. But you know what? Quite often what happens is the first attempt fails, but then you look at it and you change it slightly and you tweak it slightly and you twist it, and it ends up kind of becoming something else, but it came from that original idea. So, you've also got to be prepared to do that, I think, as well. Good ideas don't usually just happen straight away. They evolve over a period of time, and they grow and they change, and you've got to be prepared to grow and change with them. So,
well said.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Harmony. I know that you're in Mexico, so to do that and to have a chat with us at this time when you're sort of away from your office, I do appreciate it. You've had some great advice to share, so thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to be back.
Oh, I think you will. You definitely will. So don't forget to join us on Friday, when we will be coming to you live from our studio with the pre-launch of the Wedding Trend Report for 2017. We'll be crossing live to various different guests, and I'll have some guests in the studio with me as well. So that's 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, and 2 p.m. Pacific Time. So it should, no, actually that was the wrong way around. It's the other way around. It's 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Yes, I think I've got that right. Okay, so thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all on Friday.